Well, hi, everyone. I am back. This is my second Facebook Live for today, but this time I don't have to do it by myself. We're so happy to see you here. And we would love to just hear from you that we're live, that all is well in Cyberland and everything is going well. As we move over to Instagram and go live there too. Welcome, Instagram friends. We are on our second live for today. Coach Lan is here with me. And we are talking about a really important topic that we started on this morning. So this morning, our topic was how do you live with someone how do you live in a marriage that's ugly and hard? And now we're talking about how do you stay well when he's still causing harm? So what we want to start with is we want to remind you, if you are here with us, thank you. But this is my public Facebook page, my public Instagram page, and Coach Leanne is here with me on our page, and you're here with me on my page, but I want you to be safe. And if you're talking about someone causing you harm, be careful what you say because we don't want it to cause you harm. Right? We're really concerned about that, as today's topic has been a little bit more dicey than sometimes others. And sometimes you might say things that later you regret. So we're going to try to keep this as generic as possible, or talk about somebody else in your life, not your life. Even if it is your life, talk about as if it's somebody else's life, so that someone can't come back and say, oh, you're talking about me. You don't know that because I didn't say you. And we just want you to be as safe as possible. So thank you for coming. We've got a lot of people online here. Thank you, Instagram people. We're so happy you're here. But we want to start by defining harm, because harm is harm, hurt is hurt. They're different. And if he's causing harm, let's define what that looks like. If you're in a marriage, and it might not be your marriage, because we're going to not talk about our marriage directly, but in a marriage, if a husband was still causing harm, what might that look like, sound like, feel like to a wife or to children in that marriage?
Yeah, type it into the chat. Let us know. How would you define harm? How would you define harm? It can come in many faces and places. So it can come, think about environmental harm, physical harm, emotional harm, mental harm, financial harm. It can come in a lot of different ways. So help us help you define harm. Yeah, it is way more than physical, Tamara. Power over. Yeah, manipulative. Neglect.
Mm-hmm. And what about spiritual harm even?
Oh, that was going to be my next word. Yes. What about spiritual harm? It's very big in this community, very big in the world around us today. We see it multiple places and spaces.
Yes. Neglecting the relationship. Okay, so neglect causes another kind of harm, but it's different than someone who's intentionally causing harm. So if someone bites you, that's a different kind of harm than if they just don't talk to you, right? It still may cause some harm to you, but it's not as lethal, right? If someone bites you and you bleed to death, it's not as lethal as if he doesn't talk to you for 3 weeks. It's painful, but it's maybe not as harmful short term. It might be as harmful long term. So we want to define harm because we're going to answer the question, how do you stay well in an environment where you're still being harmed, right? How do you stay well? Can you stay well? You can stay, just like you can stay in a concentration camp because you have to. You don't have a choice. But can you stay well? And what does that look like? What does that look like? All right, so harm is something that causes trauma. Harm is hurt, anger, rude, mean, confusion, manipulation, power overing, neglecting.
You know, and here's something else, Leslie, I'm seeing in the feed, the silent treatment. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as you were sharing a minute ago, I was thinking back to one time I was fairly young and I was out walking and a big giant German Shepherd, you know, came running out of the backyard right to the chain link fence. And it was, you know, I mean, it was, I don't even want to sound as loud because I would probably offend someone and scare somebody. But it was so frightening to me. it caught me so off guard. So and I'm saying all of this because, ladies, I want you to think about this for a minute. Harm, like I said, can come in different places. I had a lot of emotional and mental harm in that moment. I was not in physical danger because, fortunately, there was a boundary. There was a chain link fence there. That does not change the fact that it definitely riled me up on the inside and on the outside. And so the gal who's talking about, my goodness, oh, we have a couple of them here. Many women deal with the silent treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That can be harmful, very harmful and very dismissive. And I am so sorry. It's just like the dog running at me, right? The dog didn't bite me. If it did, I would have had to go to the hospital, rabies, all the things.
But it scared you, and that causes some harm. Yeah. Someone on Instagram says we lose ourselves when we are under harm. We end up in a dark mindset when we cannot live well under harm. So let's talk about that. Is it possible to live well when you are continually being harmed? Is it possible for you to live well when you are continually being harmed? Right? Because we're talking about, can you stay well?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when we think about a concentration camp, these people were being harmed. But the difference in a concentration camp versus a marriage is that in a concentration camp, you're not expecting your captors to treat you well. You're not expecting them to care about you. There's been no covenant promise of relationship, right? And so although they may cause you harm, it's a different kind of setting because it's not the same kind of relationship quality that a marriage or a family relationship is supposed to be like. Love does not harm, it says, right? In Romans, love does not harm. Love may hurt sometimes, but love does not harm. And so when you're in this supposedly love relationship, or, even if it's not romantic love, but you care about someone, or they say they care about you, and you make vows together to love and to be together for the rest of your life, and that person is causing you harm intentionally, causing you harm through neglect, through the silent treatment, through manipulation, through coercive control, through name calling, through emotional abuse. How do you stay well? Can you stay well? Because I think so many women who are Christians think that somehow God's requiring them to stay well and stay in relationship with someone who's causing them harm. Just forgive, they say. Just forgive. Let it go. Turn the other cheek. Forget that it happened. Let's rebuild broken trust. Let's trust him again. He said he was sorry. Forgive 70 times 7. How do we do that as human beings to someone who has deeply harmed us? How do we do it? Yeah.
I really appreciate everyone, your vulnerability in the share, in the feed here. Anne Marie says, no, over time, the damage accumulates no matter how hard you work to care for yourself. Just like being exposed to a little poison every day, it builds up. Yeah. And with that, it's like taking a sip of poison when you're around those toxic people, because harm is, like Leslie, like you said, harm is different than hurtful. Harm is toxic.
Okay. So Krista makes a really good point. She said, I think that we need to set boundaries in order to protect ourselves. Yes, we do. All right. So if you are able to set boundaries with yourself, not with them, they're not going to. So you can't set a boundary with a tiger. You can't say, tiger, I'm not going to allow, you can't hurt me. You can't bite me. What you can say is, hey, I'm not putting my hand in the tiger's mouth. I'm not even giving the tiger a bowl anymore. I'm not even getting in the same room with the tiger because the tiger always bites me when I do that. Those are your boundaries, right? So it's what you will do and you won't do so that you don't get bitten by the tiger. And so it might mean that you have to withdraw from somebody, that you need to have better boundaries for yourself, for stewarding your safety. It might be that you need to separate your bank accounts because the way that they handle money harms you. It might be that you have to file for your taxes separately because they are lying on their tax forms, and that's going to harm you because the IRS, if you're married and you're filing jointly and you don't know what's going on, that's your bad. That's your bad. The IRS is going to hold you just as responsible for the harm that they've caused legally. And so you might, if you know that's going on, you might have to say, hey, I am not willing to participate in this fraudulent tax. And you wouldn't say it quite this way, but you're saying it to yourself. I'm not willing to participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness. I'm not going to cheat the IRS and be responsible for that because that's how you want to do the taxes. I'm filing mine separately. And you might have some boundaries. However, when you start to get strong enough to do that, you might experience more harm. Right?
Depending on it escalates, doesn't it?
Yes, it can. Yes. It can. So this is where I think it's really important that I don't know you guys, and we love you and we care about you, but we're going to push you a little bit because I think for so many women that we deal with, you're staying on this hopium mountain. Like, oh, maybe the bear is going to turn into a puppy. Or maybe if I stay long enough and pray hard enough, the lion won't keep biting me and he's going to turn into a kitty cat. And maybe he will if you leave and he turns into a kitty cat and you can reconcile. That's fine. But if you keep letting yourself be harmed over, even Jesus didn't let himself be harmed. All right. He escaped from those who were trying to throw him off the cliff. He didn't have relationship with people who were intentionally hurting him. He just didn't do it. All right. And so what do you do when you're married to someone who's cheating on you and harming you and doing financial things and spiritual things and things with your children that are causing harm to you and to them?
Mm-hmm. Leslie, what a powerful question. And, I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to call harm, because oftentimes we are not getting our harmful things that are done to us validated by our churches or by, a good friend or a family member. They can downplay it. And so we need to recognize the harm and we need to speak the harm out. Another human being needs to know what's going on, what's occurring in your relationship. And sometimes for us sisters, we have to accept it, that this is harm. This isn't just hurtful. This isn't just he's having a bad day. This is reoccurring over and over, that this is going on. And there's where safety comes in. So I think we've got to recognize the harm. We have to call it what it is.
So here's one thing you can do. Leanne talked about safety. So here's where we have to really think through this biblically, because I often get some feedback from people. God hates all divorce. Also, you're teaching people, I don't want you to get divorced. If at all possible, no. But sometimes you have to. So your safety is important to God. And when we think about God's values, okay, so let me ask you a question. If you were in Israel, or you were in Ukraine right now, and you saw some Hamas people in Israel coming after the Jews, and you had some Jews in your house, and they were knocking on your door saying, "Are Jews here? We're coming to get them." Like they did this in World War II. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's more important to God in that moment that you be honest? Because honesty is a high value to God. He says, thou shalt not lie, right? Do not bear false witness. So you would say to the Hamas, oh yes, we have Jews in the bedroom. They're hiding there. I just need to be honest before the Lord. Is that more honoring to God than to say, nope, we don't have any Jews here? Lying straight out to people who would harm others. Which do you think is more important to God? For you to be honest, or for you to protect and safeguard the lives of others? And by doing that, you might have to lie. There's a really good story about this in the Old Testament. The Jews were scouting out the land, and they were being tracked down by the people of, I can't remember what race they were, but Rahab's tribe, whatever that was. And Rahab was a prostitute in town. And she saw the Jews getting tracked down. And she said, come hide out in here, hide over there. And the soldiers came knocking on her door. Where'd they go? And she said, they went that way. They were hiding in her house. She lied to keep them safe. And Rahab ended up being commended by God in the Hebrews Hall of Fame.
That's right.
So sometimes we have this high value of the sanctity of marriage. And I have been married a long time to the same person, right? So I have a high value in marriage. I believe that God calls us as best we can to keep our covenants. And I also know that sometimes it's not possible. And God knew that too. That's why he allowed for divorce. And I hope that you come to our workshop on Tuesday, September 24th, because we're going to be talking about some of the misbeliefs that we have been taught as Christians, that somehow it would be more honorable to sacrifice yourself and die, whether it's emotional death, spiritual death, physical death, than for you to get divorced, just to keep your marriage together at all costs, at any price. And I don't think that's what God teaches. I don't think that's what his word teaches. And so sometimes we have to wrestle. What's most important here? What matters most? And let me just say to you, you can't do anything for the Lord if you're dead. Your safety and your children's safety matters. Or if you are so crushed in spirit that you want to be dead, even if you're not.
That's right. I love that you brought that up. Safety, friends, your physical safety needs to be a top priority. It needs to be a top priority. And there are safety plans that you can create if you are being harmed in that way. I've received phone calls from women in very dire situations, calling from their closets, calling afraid, calling from their cars, afraid, trying to drive away, get away from their abusive partners. So ladies, this is a real issue, and it's in your churches. It's maybe in your home. And, if I could be so bold to say, we'd love you at the workshop, leslievernick.com/join workshop, save your seat. But if that's you right now and you are in physical harm, I would rather you get off this Facebook Live, call 1-800-799-SAFE, get someone to advocate for you to get safe instead of enduring a physically harmful situation. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking to somebody here, but I just really felt led to say that.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do this by yourself.
And God isn't calling you to sacrifice. Lisa Turkhurst, my friend, says it the best way. She said, God is not asking you to sacrifice the best of who you are in order to enable the worst in someone else to flourish. For you to sacrifice you, if I could sacrifice me to save someone from harm, even a woman who was being abused, and I went in and started to, shout and scream, and he shot me instead, that would be a noble sacrifice. But for me to sacrifice my mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual health in order to allow you to harm me and rape me and continue to call me names and all that, how does that help either one of us or the kiddos who are watching this or hearing this in the bedroom?
That's right.
It doesn't help. It's a lose, lose, lose. Satan wins. Why would we ever encourage a woman to do that, or a man? And ladies, I just read in the newspaper this week, the Olympic runner was burned to death by her boyfriend because she wouldn't do what he wanted. She was killed. And a woman in Utah was killed by her. Every week we read about this in the newspaper. If someone is doing you harm, you as a Christian woman are called to steward your one precious life and protect your children. And it's okay for you to say enough is enough.
That's right. Well, and I love that you brought that up, because we need to know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable behavior. And it's okay to say no more abuse. That is not acceptable. It is okay to say no. And Leslie, I think that you're going to be in this workshop that you're going to be doing. You're going to be talking about some of the lies that can keep us stuck in our head that prevent us from saying no more.
Yeah. So the workshop is called If He Doesn't Hit You. So yes, if he hits you, obviously you're saying, I can't stay well and I got to get out of here. And, my lip is bleeding or my eye is black or, he threatened me with a gun. I need to get out of here. Most of us are smart enough to know that this is not a scene that we can stay well in. But sometimes it's much more subtle than that. And you're slowly being depleted, like the oxygen or the balloon is just depleting until you're just flatlined. It's like the frog in boiling water that you don't see what's happening until you're too late to jump out. And so this whole workshop is, if he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? Because sometimes, and Leanne and I were talking about this before we ever got on, sometimes it's not, it's just hard. You're just in a hard spell in your marriage. It's just hard. You don't get along. You don't see eye to eye. You want different things. You don't seem to be able to connect like you used to. It's not fun. That's not necessarily abusive. It's just hard. So how do you determine the difference between hard and harm? When is it harmful? Right? And what's doing the harm? Because sometimes we're doing our own harm by our mindset. Like we're harming ourselves because we're saying, well, God hates divorce, so he'd rather I just be killed, or he'd rather I just stay and wither up. Maybe not. And these are some things that we're going to need to talk to you about in the workshop and show you the scripture. And so we're going to talk about what is the signs of an abusive relationship. I'm going to give you very clear signs and very clear scripture about this. If he doesn't hit you, we're not even going to talk about physical abuse. We'll talk about all the other kinds of abuse. So if you're unclear as to whether this is just hard or this is abusive, then I just talked to a friend today, Leanna, a professional friend who said, oh my gosh, I've been going to counseling and I just realized my marriage is just like the women you talk about. I didn't realize I was being so coercively controlled in my marriage. I didn't realize it, that I was being sexually abused in my marriage when he was pressuring me and guilt tripping me into having the kinds of sex I didn't want to have. I thought it was my responsibility as a wife. And so it's really important that you educate yourself on what is harmful and what is it costing you and your kids to stay blind to this. And then what are some of the beliefs that you need to break up with, Christian beliefs that we've been taught that keeps us stuck from stewarding and protecting ourselves and prioritizing him and the marriage over our safety and our sanity.
Oh, so well said, Leslie. And sometimes in our family of origin, maybe there hasn't been physical or sexual abuse, but there has been a lot of emotional, mental, and financial and spiritual abuse. And we didn't know that that's what it was. And so, like you talked about the frog in boiling water, we've spent so much time in an unhealthy place that we don't know what healthy is supposed to look like.
Right.
And we get so, I hate to use the word, we get so good at tolerating, but we do. And we just develop this alligator skin that is very unhealthy on us. And, we've got to learn that it's okay to be a little softer.
And the other thing that we develop is, so if we talk about a trauma response, if you're being harmed, you're being traumatized, especially if it's happening over and over again. And so we develop a trauma response that we've actually spiritualized.
Yes.
All right. It's the trauma response. We've all heard of the fight and flight response, right? So either I'm fighting or flighting. And sometimes we've seen the freeze response. Like I just freeze up and I don't know what to say. My brain can't even think. But the fourth response that hasn't been talked a lot about in Christian circles, especially, is a response called the fawning response. Like a little fawn, like a doe who just is compliant, who just does what he wants, just gives in all the time, that people pleases, because you're living in a trauma response that if I don't, I will have a terrible price to pay. So this is me. I have to just give in. This is me. I have to just do what he says. This is me. I just have to, but we spiritualize it saying, but I'm going the extra mile and I'm loving him sacrificially and I'm doing what God calls me to do. But you're not doing it out of freedom. You're doing it out of fear.
That's right.
And there's a difference. When you are people pleasing, I love to please people. What do you think I'm doing all these Facebook Lives for? I love to make you happy and please you and give you all kinds of material. All right. I love to do that. But when we do things because we're afraid of rejection or we're afraid of the cost, if I don't do it, he's going to keep me up all night. If I don't have sex with him, he's just going to bug me and bug me and bug me and bug me and bug me. And then he's going to, keep the kids up all night and I forget it. I'm just going to give in. When we live in that kind of place and we call that submission, we call that love, we call that being kind and spiritualize it. It's not. It's a trauma response called fawning. And we need to recognize we're being harmed because we don't have a voice and we don't have a choice. And so this relationship has robbed us of our God-given humanity of agency. And it's not healthy.
It's not healthy. I often ask the ladies that I'm working with, I'll say, do you feel like you are being led by love, which God is love, so he's leading you no matter, stay well, leave well, all the things, or are you being pushed by fear? Because fear pushes. Love leads. Love challenges. Love challenges. So I don't know, man, I love that the support y'all are given in the chat is so encouraging. Leslie, when we do the workshops, we take it off of social media, right? And the chat is firing. There's hundreds of women there sharing while you're teaching and guiding and directing us, and the love and appreciation that they're giving, and even the community that they get by being in a workshop like this is life-changing and very life-giving.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do at this workshop that we do is we take it off of social media so that you do have the freedom to say what you need to say and ask the questions you need to ask. So I will be teaching you for about an hour, not quite an hour, maybe 50 minutes on if he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? And how do you know? What are some of the criteria? I'm going to give you the number one bullet, the red flag, and then 4 ways that they do this, sometimes subtle, sometimes very sneaky, that you don't see as abusive. They just see it as, oh, that's just how he is. But we're going to teach you what that looks like. And then we're going to teach you some breakup beliefs that you might have to break up with in order for you to get healthy and strong, and how to do that. But Leanne was saying the community is amazing. And so you really do want to show up live to the workshop, because there's 2 things that you get. You will get a replay. If you come, you'll get a replay. If you don't come and you sign up, you'll still get the replay. But what you won't get, because we take this off of social media, you have the freedom to be who you are and where you're at. And you're going to get lots of love and care and compassion. And the amount of women that say, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Oh, me too, me too, me too, me too, me too. I mean, we see this me too all the way down the feed. And all of a sudden you're going to say, wow, it's not me. I'm not the crazy one. And there's such a relief that you are not alone. You are not the only Christian woman going through this and battling this and feeling the feelings that you're having. And that can be life-giving. And just like in the feed right here, you're going to see some sisters who are a little further ahead than you. Mm-hmm. And they can help you and blaze the trail in front of you of what are your next right steps, so that you don't get stuck in being harmed and your kids being harmed. And then the sins of the fathers are passed on to the next generation and the mothers because of your passivity, right? Your fear, you're living in fear. Oh, I can't break up my home, it'll ruin my kids. Really? It's not going to ruin your kids to grow up the way they're growing up, right? And so those are the hard choices that as a woman you have to think through and make. And we want to do that in community, because nobody thinks perfectly all by themselves, including me. We need one another, and you're going to experience that in the workshop. And after I'm done teaching, Leanne and I are going to be with you for probably an hour and a half of answering your questions. And there you can be more honest with your questions, because they're not on social media. And the question and answer part and the chat part never get recorded, and they never get taken and given on the replay. So if you just come to the replay, you watch the replay, that's great. You'll get the information, but you won't get the sense of community and the Q&A, because we really want that to be protected. For only people who attend live get to be in that part. So we hope you sign up, and we hope you come.
We do. We do. And Kathy, thank you. The groups have been life-changing. And, I see Jenny saying things can improve incrementally. And they can, just like we talked about the frog in hot water, things get hotter before we know it, and pretty soon we're a boiled frog leg, right? Things can get better for you. Leslie, I think one of the most life-changing things, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I first got to know you well over a dozen years ago, and I was following you, one of the things that you said to me really bothered me, to be honest, at first, because you you used a word that it like put a check in my spirit. You said that you cannot stay well if you are being deformed. And I kept going, well, I'm not, I mean, I'm not feeling physically deformed. I kept externalizing it, thinking about it in my head that it was deforming my body. And then the more I prayed, the more I spent time in community with other women, the more I realized I had this thing. When you talk about fawning, I was like the queen of fawning and people pleasing in different relationships that I am in. And oh, I would just I would get an A plus. But when I took a step back and I started to look at my life, and I looked at my thought life and my emotional life, and I had to ask myself, am I deformed? And then I had to go, what does deformed mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
What does deformed mean? And it was like, well, I'm not in alignment. I'm not my best self. I'm not who God created me to be at all. I'm turning into a chameleon, depending on who I'm with. And that is deformative. And so I'm so grateful that you had the courage to give such a direct word, because I could be the girl that goes, used to, I'm getting better. But that would just loop and go in circles. But I had to, we talked the other day on a live about being a reflection, looking in the mirror. I had to hold a mirror up, and maybe some of you are the same. Are you deformed emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially? Do you know your checkbook account numbers? All those things can have harm enter into your world, and you may not even know it.
Yeah. And I think we are also very deformed by the words that we listen to. Yeah. And so if we're in an emotionally abusive, I mean, my mom said some horrible things to me about me. I remember she said some, like, you have no sparkle to your face. You have no sparkle to your eyes. There's something wrong with you. And, when I look at my childhood pictures, it's true. I must have been depressed as a kid. I didn't have any sparkle to my face or my eyes. But it was really partly because of where I was growing up. And so I think that the more we let someone's words define us, and what are your husband's words to you? What does he say about you? Who are you? Does he get to define you? Because if he gets to define you, he may deform you, right? And sometimes people get deformed in grandiose ways. We look at narcissists, and they're deformed, just as deformed as someone who's got low self-esteem. Narcissists think they're better than other people, that they're entitled to all the perks and privileges. They're better than everybody else. They're more right than everybody else. They expect more deferential treatment than anybody else. That's a deformed person. And they've let the words of their own head and the words of others tell them who they are. But we need to transfer that to God, because he's our creator and he's the one who shaped us and he knows who we are. And so, for example, when he says to Peter, I know that you're a human being and you're going to mess up here. You're going to deny me 3 times. But actually, who you are is you're the rock. I created you to be the rock of the church. Or Gideon, I know you're just a teeny weeny little farmer of the least tribe of Benjamin, but I've made you to be a mighty warrior, Gideon. That's who you are, right? And so we can take the words of our own head or the words of somebody else or the words of culture, or we can listen to the words of God, because words are powerful. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. But friend, whose words are you letting penetrate into your innermost being? Because they might be deforming you. They might be telling you you're worthless and you're no good and you're just stupid and you're incapable and incompetent. And if those are the words you're hearing from a spouse, they're dishonoring words, and it's not who you are.
That's right. and kicking those lies and turning down that volume. And, I just don't know. The part of the question for our live is, how do you stay well when he's still causing harm? I don't know any other place to go. Just write it, get my face in the book, get off of Facebook and get in the book. And, it's one of those things where going to God's word and being reminded who it is that you are.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't see your worth, that's on them. You have incredible value.
Mm-hmm. And people didn't see Jesus's worth, so don't take it personally. It's like not everybody likes certain things, and someone may not like your strengths. And again, it's not a statement about your worth or your value, just like not everybody likes broccoli or not everybody likes chocolate. Can you imagine people who don't like chocolate? Like my little grandchildren do not like chocolate. If we're going out for ice cream, they're picking something else. I'm like, really? Like if I would have to have ice cream, it would only be chocolate. But it doesn't make chocolate bad or good. It's not a value judgment. It's a preference. But sometimes we decide that if someone doesn't like us or they don't like our values or they don't like what we stand for, that something's wrong with us because everybody has to like us. But not everybody's going to like us. In fact, if everybody likes you, there's something wrong with you.
Then you're the people-pleasing queen or the honor, and you're not you.
Yes. Right? Not everybody's going to like you. And that makes nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just that there's some people who dark doesn't like light. It says that. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to be the light and they're trying to blow your candle out, there's nothing wrong with your light. They just don't like it. But sometimes when you're in a toxic relationship, that's exactly what they try to do. And we don't feel strong enough to fight that, especially as women, because we're told that he gets to decide. He gets to decide because he's our husband. He's our head. We have to submit. And so his words somehow get elevated as more important and more true than our words or God's words. And that has to stop if you want to be healthy in any marriage, whether it's a healthy marriage or not. All right. People say some pretty flattering things to me sometimes. That could give me a real big head. But what I say to myself is, I'm not that good and I'm not that bad. Both ends, right? So that it's not true that I'm that great and it's not true that I'm that bad. Whichever end is there, they're going to deform me, right? And so it's very important that we listen to God's words. And so how to stay well? You may not be able to stay well long term, but the first step is for you to recognize, whoa, I'm in a toxic environment. We're not going to call this healthy anymore. We're not going to call this normal anymore. Where's my gas mask? So if you were in an unhealthy environment and you couldn't get out, like let's say everybody in your house has COVID but you, all right, what would you do? You would start wearing gloves and a mask. At least 2 years ago you would, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be hugging them and you wouldn't be kissing them and you wouldn't be sleeping with them. You would be having boundaries so that you didn't get infected. And that's not selfish and it's not bad. It's what you do to steward you when you're around people who are toxic. But you can't do that long term, especially when they're tearing you down for doing it. And so you have to decide, how harmful is it? How's it impacting me? How's it impacting my children? And what is the next right step? Leanne, we're about 5:08 and we're going to move into some questions now. So let me go to our question person. Isn't neglect emotional abuse? You want to answer that?
Well, yeah. I mean, what is it? Let's talk about what emotional neglect is for just a second. If we're going to really answer this, isn't neglect emotional abuse? So if we're talking about neglect, it is, it occurs really when the needs for support, for affirmation, for attention. Leslie, we talked about all the A's, right? It's affirmation, attention, acceptance,
affection.
Thank you. So I'll just put like a C, connection. That if you're being consistently ignored, that feels pretty yucky. Or you're not seen, known, or heard by the person who's supposed to see, know, and hear you in the most intimate and lovely of ways. Yeah, that can be pretty darn abusive and extremely irresponsible. Mm-hmm. It can happen with parents to their children. It can happen with wives to their husbands, husbands to their wives.
Studies now have shown that the absolute most traumatic form of child abuse is neglect.
That's right.
Because what that says is, you're not important enough to me to give you any of my time, any of my energy, any of my goodwill, any of my resources. Right? And so what it says is, you're worthless to me. You're worthless. A parent who beats a child for bad grade or for wrecking the car or for talking back, whatever, that is abusive as well. But it also signals, I care about the kid you're becoming. You're not allowed to talk that way. Bad kid, but at least there's some energy behind that I care about who you are and how you're showing up. And I don't like how you just wrecked my car. And they're not handling themselves well, but there is something, at least they cared. At least they cared enough to spank me because I had a bad grade, or spank me because I broke the car, or spank me because I talked back. Did it horribly, but at least they put energy into me. When you're completely neglected, when the sin of indifference says, you don't matter to me, all you matter to me is how you serve me. So make sure you're available for sex. Make sure you made my dinner. Is my laundry clean? Are you the maid? Are you the housewife? Are you the mother of our kids? Are you the sex object? And as long as you do that, we're good. But I don't have to care about you. Sort of like the relationship with your cell phone. You love your cell phone as long as it does what you want it to do, but it's an object. You don't really care about your cell phone. Right? You don't care about your cell phone. And so, yes, it's an insidious form of abuse, and it's very, very painful.
It is painful. I love that you when you said the sin of indifference. Thank you for that, because I often say, the opposite of love is not hate. It's indifference.
Right.
That act of withholding someone else's dignity, their value, their humanity, by not speaking to them, by withholding affection or validation or encouragement, all the things, it is so harmful. That I would call that harmful. That's just not hurtful. It's harmful. And I hope we never get used to it. It's not okay. I get pretty fired up about this.
It's not okay, but
it happens.
It happens, and you can't legislate.
That's right.
Someone to care about you. So if this is you and you have been emotionally, physically, sexually, financially neglected, it's information that says they don't care about you. Now, this painful information, I've gotten some of that information myself. It's painful information that someone doesn't care about you, or they don't care about you the way you want them to. So now that you have that information, we talked this morning about reality. I'm not going to resist reality. That's hard information, just like having a tumor is hard information. But now what do I need to do about that information? Because just because someone doesn't care about me doesn't make me worthless. Even if my mother or father forsake me, the Lord says, I will lift you up. So just because someone declares you unimportant, worthless, I'm not paying any attention to you, doesn't define your value. It just defines your value to that person for sure. But don't keep begging someone to love you who doesn't want to love you. You have to understand reality. They don't. And so now what? What do you do about that? How do you move away so they don't continue to harm you with that neglect?
Right. And let's see, here's another thing that, going back to our question for today, something that's really coming up for me, and I know I brought it up a little bit ago when we first began, but how do we do this? We have, human beings have a need for connection, and have a need for support, and we have a need for safety, and we have a need for belonging. Mm-hmm. And when those are withheld from us, I talk to women and they'll say, oh yeah, well, sometimes I wish he would hit me, so at least I would have proof of the pain that I'm going through. Mm-hmm. Because it's so, there's not a scar on the outside, but there is on the inside. So we got to get, we have to say, we can do something about this. Yeah. We can do something about this.
And I think this. So I'm going to say one more piece about this. The person right now, if you're in this situation, the person who has to care about you is you. You've been neglecting you. You've been neglecting you. And they've been neglecting you, but you've been neglecting you. You can't change them, but you can change you and say, wow, I only have one life. I only have one body. I only have one spirit. I am not going to continue to try to get him to say I'm valuable. I'm going to say I'm valuable to me, even if I'm not valuable to him. And I'm going to get nourished, and I'm going to get friends, and I'm going to get a good night's sleep, and I'm going to get, some support, because you need it. Leanne said it. We all need it.
You do.
So what do you need to get in order to feel connected? And one of the things is just feel what it feels like to be connected here with total strangers who get you. It feels kind of good. Come to the workshop. You're going to get another experience of that, and understand that it's not you. People will care about you, even if they don't. There were people who didn't care about Jesus. It didn't make him worthless.
Mm-hmm.
It hurt his feelings, but it didn't make him worthless. It doesn't define him.
Leslie, is it okay if I give the address to those who are just listening and not watching and can't see it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks. So if you go to leslievernick.com/join workshop, that's going to take you to a link. It's a wonderful page. There's information about the workshop, and then there is a button. Just because you go to that page doesn't mean it's going to automatically sign you up. So I just want to give, for those who aren't as tech savvy, you've got to click that link to reserve your seat. And we encourage you warmly to do that.
Yeah, it'll invite you to give your email. And the reason we need your email is because we're going to send you the link to the workshop, because it's off of social media. So we'll need your email to say, the workshop's starting in an hour. Here's your workbook. Download this workbook ahead of time. All of that kind of information that you'll need. And so that's why you need to sign up. I'm gonna put in a couple different questions here that I just want. We have probably more than we're going to be able to finish today. But here's one. My husband left me note on the door because he said I was disobedient and lost God's covering. I was a hardworking, pleasing, and doting wife, doing things out of love. Was I wrong to keep trying?
Sweet woman, you are, how many of you, how many of you can resonate with what this woman just said? You are disobedient. So who are you disobeying? He's wanting you to obey him, that you lost God's covering. There's that wonderful umbrella of protection that we saw with the whole ATIA, Bill Gothard movement. And you were hardworking, you were pleasing, you were doing everything as a wife that you knew to do at the time you knew to do it. You said, I was doing things out of love. So you were responding out of your best self. Unfortunately, his mindset, his thinking was warped. He didn't have a correct view of marriage if he thought that you had to obey him before you obey God. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. Wrong to keep trying. If trying wears you out and, like we said earlier, deforms you and depletes you, then it's time to get some sisters to help you stand up a little straighter and check your mindset and see what are the beliefs and lies that you have been living under, the rules that you have been living under, if they are true, biblical, and God-honoring.
Mm-hmm. And let me say this. I think there's a noble part of trying, because that's your values. Those are your core values, that I'm not going to hate back. I'm not going to repay evil for evil. We talked about that this morning. I'm going to be the better person here, the bigger person here. I'm going to forgive. Those are all wonderful virtues and values that I hold. I hope you hold them too. But that doesn't make a relationship. Jesus did all that. That doesn't make a safe and trusting relationship all by yourself. It certainly stops some of the back and forth and, the ugliness that can go on between two people. So you can stop that end of it. You can stop your part of that destructive dance by being strong enough to catch yourself and not go down that slide, which many of us have done in the past. But you cannot make a relationship safe and trusting all by yourself. You cannot do that. And so your husband, even by the way he informed you that he was done, treated you as an object. You're not even worth having a conversation about this. You're not even worth having understanding, hey, I'm unhappy. Let's talk about this. What do we do about fixing our? He didn't have the respect for you as a daughter of the Most High God that he's saying he believes in. And yet he's not honoring you as a fellow image bearer because you didn't do exactly what he wanted as a wife. That's a very sick man's mindset.
Mhm.
And to cater to that and fawn over that is actually strengthening that mindset.
Yes.
So how do we speak the truth in love and say, that's the way he thinks. I can't change his mind. All I can say is, I'm not willing to do life that way as your slave. That's not what God called me to be. A wife is different than a slave. And he's not going to like that because he really wants a slave wife. And that's not what God's asking you to be, nor did he create marriage for that. And it's okay for you to speak truth about that. And if he doesn't receive it, that's not, you didn't try hard enough. You don't have the power to make someone change their mind. Jesus didn't make Pilate change his mind. He didn't get Judas to change his mind. Jesus didn't, and he was God. Don't put that on you. Don't put that on you or other women. If only you tried harder, he'd get it. No, sometimes people don't want to get it because they want a slave. I kind of like a slave, wouldn't you? I mean, really, wouldn't you love someone to just do whatever you want to do it? Do it. You don't have to care about them. They just do whatever you want. Unfortunately, we don't get that. That's not what God created human beings for. But in our sin nature, wouldn't you like one too? Go do my laundry. Go, fix this, clean up this, right? We could get off on that, but that's not how God wants us to do life or relationships.
Right. And I think just the reminder for safety again, if you're going to start setting boundaries, if you're going to start speaking up and you're going to be saying that some of the stuff is not okay, that things could escalate. And so, have a safety plan emotionally, have a place that you can go and give yourself some breathing room, even if it's into your bathroom, and lock the door, just to give yourself a little bit of a break. So I just wanted to.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because if someone's holding you hostage, whether it's spiritually, they're holding you hostage with scriptural passages, or they're holding you hostage with a gun or whatever, you're not going to argue with them.
That's right.
You're not going to have a conversation with them. That's not the things I'm telling you are the things that you have to think. I'm not saying you should have to say them. Sometimes it's not wise to say them. The prudency, danger, and take refuge. Don't speak the words of a wise to a fool because they will often harm you with those words once they see what you're going to do. So have your safety plan in place. Here's where you say, hey, God isn't asking me to put up with this. I'm not saying you say that to him. You say that to you. Right? You say that to you. It may not be wise or safe to say that to him. It's like saying to someone who's going to rob you, I'm not going to let you rob me. You might say, I better give him my money so he doesn't shoot me. And how do I get out of here? But you wouldn't say that out loud, right? But you're thinking that. You're thinking that to yourself to help yourself in the moment. All right, let's see. We've got a couple more minutes. Let me think of it. Do you see a question that you want to? I think this is really important. My question for here, if you have a transactional pattern, is it possible to be healthy ever? I think that if you have a transactional pattern for every relationship that you're in, then that becomes a very tit for tat, like you're keeping score. Like, okay, you did this for me, so now I'll do this for you. And you did this for you. So it's like an employee-employer, like you pay me and I'll give you the work. And you don't pay me, I'm not going to give you the work. That's not love. And so that's not healthy. I'm not saying that we don't have some of those relationships, but they're not personal, close relationships. God calls us to love, and that doesn't have a price tag, and it doesn't keep score. Love doesn't keep score. However, love is also wise. And when someone isn't reciprocal in that love, then it moves into how do we love an enemy, right? How do we love an enemy? When someone harms us, then we're loving an enemy biblically. What does that look like? Well, it doesn't mean being married to him. It doesn't mean sleeping with him. It doesn't mean kissing him. God doesn't ask you to do that with an enemy. But it does mean that you don't retaliate against them. It does mean that you don't pay them back evil for evil that they caused you. So if you're just a person who does transactional relationships, tit for tat, you did this for me, I'll do this for you, you don't do this for me, I won't do this for you. It's a pretty empty emotionally connecting. Leanne said, we need to connect and we need to belong. And that doesn't foster that kind of connection and belonging.
Mm-hmm. Leslie, she responded in the chat. So when I said transactional pattern, I meant if I do not make any waves and do not mention any wrongs, then I am not ignored or treated poorly.
Well, but he's saying that you have to be robotic in order for me to care about you. Like you have to not be you in order for me to interact with you. So you're an object. You're not, I don't care about your heart. I don't care about your needs. I don't care about your hurts. Don't talk about any of that. As long as you're nice and you're smiling, we can get along. That's not a true relationship. I mean, you can stay well that way if you're going to stay long-term married for other reasons. So let's say you have littles, right, and he's a good dad and he's not harmful to them, and you think it's in their best interest for you to stay well while they're little, at least for now. And so you're staying well and you're not having any expectations. You don't give him any feedback. You don't try to improve your marriage. And he's pretty good to you then, right? So now he's not causing direct harm to you by you challenging him. And now you're preparing. This isn't going to be a long-term relationship, right? This isn't, or if it is a long-term relationship, if I have, maybe I'm 50 and I have to do that because I have no health insurance and I didn't prepare economically, right? So then I'm not going to get my emotional belonging and connection from this person. So where am I going to find some girlfriends in my life that I am going to get that from? And even though I stay married and I stay well, I'm not bitter, I'm not deformed, I'm not fawning, I'm just not in a good relationship with him. We're polite strangers. Mm-hmm. And some people do stay well as polite strangers, as long as you don't challenge him and bug him and he wants to watch TV all day or porn or whatever he's going to do. As long as he's not directly attacking you, you let go of that, you might be able to stay well, but now he's not causing you harm because you've gotten some nourishment elsewhere. You're not still expecting him to be your husband provider, right? He might pay the bills, but he's not acting as a husband. He's acting like a roommate.
Exactly. And you're not saying, well, if I just say this just this way, then he'll finally get it this time. You know, we've got to give up on that. And you want to engage in communities that uplift you. Engage in communities that uplift you, people that get you.
And like you and want to be around you and are willing to be brave enough to tell you the truth. Like, I want my friends to tell me, if I have a booger in my nose, tell me. If I'm acting poorly and not in alignment with my values, not their values, but my values. Because if they know me, they know my values. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not acting in alignment with my values, I hope they call me out on it, because that would be helpful. Like a friend who calls you out when you don't have a mirror in front of you. And they say, hey, you know, something's coming out of your nose, fix it, because they want to look their best. That's what a good friend does. That's the difference between hurt and harm. They're not trying to harm you, but it might hurt your feelings a little bit or your ego to get that kind of feedback, right? Mm-hmm. So we're at 3 minutes to close. And so I would love to hear what your takeaway was from today. What was your number one takeaway that you heard the Lord, not me, not Leanne, but what did you hear the Holy Spirit? Because the Holy Spirit lives inside of you. And he says, Jesus tells us, we don't have to be afraid because the Holy Spirit will instruct us in all truth. He will lead and guide you in the way you should go. So what is the Holy Spirit saying to you in this moment? And it might be just a little thing like, hey, you don't have to keep fawning. Or it might be, hey, sign up for the workshop. Or it might be, hey, quit trying to get him to give you something he's not going to give you. What did you hear? What did you hear? Yeah. What did you hear? What was your takeaway from today? Would love to hear that. I have loads of sweet up close friends, but none close. So we need close friends. We need close friends, and they don't have to be our spouse. We need close friends. We need a sense of belonging. Yeah.
We do. Yeah. You know, I have to let go of any hope or expectation of change.
Mm-hmm. And
sometimes if you're holding on to hope more than you're holding on to Jesus, then you need to change the rope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 All right. Let me just ask one more question, and we're going to go. Leanne, how would you differentiate gray rocking from the silent treatment?
So, well, gray rock, for those of you who don't know, it's funny because I'm holding a rock in my hand right now. So when you said that question, it caught me a little off guard. Gray rocking, you're just going to be like a gray rock. Pretty, you're not very interesting. They're not going to really want to spend time with you. So gray rock, you might sound like, yep, okay, yep, sure. Just kind of, well,
Flatline.
well, thank you. There we go. A little bit of flatline.
Like a gray rock.
Yeah, you literally are a gray rock. Gray rock's not going to talk back to you. You can step on it, step over it, stub your toe on it. It's not going to talk back. It's not going to, provide the banter or the fuel to ignite really icky behavior. That's one way you can navigate a hard situation, right? Silent treatment is just absolutely, I'm going to use my silence to punish you. That is how I see the difference. Leslie, what would you add?
I would say that's great. Yeah, the silent treatment is a punishment to control you, right? Just like his anger, like, it's big and powerful. It scares you and you get compliant. Sometimes the silent treatment is used in the same way to control you, to get you to back down from your boundaries, to get you to fawn. Come on, please talk to me. We've got to work this out. I'm so lonely. I miss, and he gets all kinds of ego boosting because you're so scared of his silent treatment. And so he uses it as a tool, or you use it as a tool to manipulate and control, and it's sinful. Sometimes we need to take a break and just shut our mouth. That's not called the silent treatment. That's just taking a break or a timeout. Or we need to recognize that we're not going to cast our pearls before swine anymore. And so we gray rock. We just have a unemotional yes or no, good or, we don't give any feedback. We don't give any commentary. We just say, okay, yep, that's right. Oh, all right, I heard you. We're just very polite and superficial. That's gray rock. We don't give it any emotional energy. But when we give the silent treatment to someone, we're punishing them to control. Or they're giving it to us. So understand that the more it works, the more they'll use it.
Mm-hmm.
The more it works, the more they'll use it. So what do you need to do? And we'll talk about this in the workshop. So please sign up. What do you need to do so it doesn't work? So it doesn't work. It doesn't give the energy that he's trying to get out of it. Anyway, we're going to need to close. If you haven't signed up for the workshop, please do. It's leslievernick.com/all one word, join workshop. Thanks, Instagram, for being here. And we're going to do our next Facebook Live. Tomorrow I'm taking a day off. But Monday we will be here. I will not be here. I'm going to be in Austin, Texas. I have a seminar to do, but I will be there. But somebody will be here on Facebook Live. Do you know what we're talking about on Monday, Leanne?
It might say it on our...
Yes, here it is. Monday, what does it mean to be a God-centered woman, not a marriage-centered woman? And Coach Leanne will be here with you on that topic. So that will be Monday, and that's going to be at same time tonight at night. So it'll be Monday evening. What does it mean to be a God-centered woman? We've talked about that shift, and we talked about that this morning because so many of us are marriage-centered or husband-centered women. So we want you to get that, and we will see you then. Have a great weekend. Take care, be safe, and do what you need to do to increase your capacity. It might be just a good night's sleep. All right. Thanks, Leanne, so much for being with us. Take care. Bye-bye.